Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Leaders in Supply Chain Talent podcast. I'm your host, Shiv Faujdar, Head of Training and Development at Alcott Global. I'm excited to have Agnes Goh as our guest today. Agnes is currently leading the talent acquisition function at L'Oreal for the SAP MENA zone that covers markets from Australia, New Zealand to Southeast Asia to India, Middle East, and North Africa. She's part of the SAP MENA HR leadership team and is responsible for the regional talent acquisition strategy. Prior to her role at L'Oreal, Agnes held the global talent acquisition leadership role for Signify Philips Lighting and was part of the global HR leadership team. She spent a brief period with LVMH as the group HR director for Southeast Asia and India. Agnes started her recruitment career with Heidrick and Struggles and later Korn Ferry, where she specialized in hiring senior level positions in the consumer sector. Before her career in recruitment, Agnes was based in Shanghai with a training and operational role in the education sector. She started her career as a teacher and holds a degree in education from the University of Melbourne. Agnes, thank you so much for joining us today. Delighted to have you here.
Here with you as well today.
Great. So, Agnes, look, you have a great career with some very significant career pivots, which I can see. You started as a teacher and then you moved on to having a training and operation role, then external recruitment, and now you've been in talent acquisition for many years. Can you share with us a bit about, this exciting career you've had, specifically focusing on the pivots and how did you go about them?
Yeah, I would say that it's a journey, definitely a journey. As an individual, I'm pretty much a perfectionist. As you can imagine, the first career that I chose was in education. All the planning that you need to do, all the specific intention that you need to put together. But I really noticed that when I was going through my own career journey and experience, I think one mindset that I always bring is having that curiosity. I'm always constantly curious, and always looking for things that I could do a little bit differently, even if it's the same type of job or same type of searches. And just go with the flow from there. I think that's been probably the most consistent, I would say, thing that I have personally discovered in the way I have discovered my own career journey, is to keep an open mind, constantly curious on things that I'm passionate about. And with that, enjoy the flow. If we're too caught up with what we want, sometimes we might miss out on many other important things. and that's how I discovered my own career.
Absolutely, absolutely. And looks like it has worked out really well for you as well. So, look, on the note of curiosity, I'm very curious to see how different things are run at L'Oreal as well. So, L'Oreal is very heavy on community development and community management. So, can you share with us how you enable in today's remote working arrangement, especially considering all the intergenerational dynamics, this spirit of community development and community management?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that question. It is a very important part of my own strategy as well, in connecting, with my colleagues and my team at L'Oreal. Let's talk about our young talent, where we are really well known for in terms of our investment in the youth. And our focus on developing careers, right? We hire quite a lot of management trainees, as well as interns in the organization, especially for our management trainees. And one of the key things that we have discovered, on first when we did physical trips, is the networking that they're saying, beyond just their own markets, right? Yeah. And as the pandemic was that hit us, we also noticed that very often we spend a lot of time just sitting at home, working from our own room, whether is it in your room, in the study, in the kitchen, in the living room. You're staring at the screen, right? We very often realize that we all have a good onboarding program. people don't get the opportunity like they have in before when they're in the physical office, right?
Mhm.
They will not be able to discover who exists or who do not exist beyond their job interaction, needed
Mhm.
interaction. And very often, sometimes they spend 6 to 8 hours on screen only talking to the few people that they interact with for months.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we have done is to start launching, events and activities where they can come together. Yeah,
Mhm.
we have done this for our management trainees in specific.
Mhm.
Very recently, that has evolved from just getting very consistent events where our senior leaders will be hosting and sharing with
Okay.
them their insights. Yeah.
Mhm.
To now, we also have, every Thursday, inspired by Clubhouse. I always joke with them what we call our TLC sessions, where we
Mhm.
give you tender loving care, but actually TLC stands for Thursday Live Conversations. Where
Okay.
it's quite the same, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Our, yeah, where our trainees actually, get insights and opportunities to interact, and
Mhm.
also a platform to share, what they're going through. The month of July, we dedicate that to self care.
Mhm.
All of us are. I mean, I think a lot of organizations are talking a lot about well-being, mental wellness, etc. and
Mhm.
so on. We do a lot of fun stuff, from a company engagement standpoint.
Mhm.
But I think when it comes to their own cohort, right, giving them a safe space to really talk about things as simple as secure, their own sense of security, their own
Mhm.
sense of assurance. Am I doing well in my job when I'm actually working from home every day? What is my manager thinking, about my performance? How could
Mhm.
I, have advice? Who can I speak to, for an advice? If because I'm a fresh graduate, I don't have much career experiences. If I'm going to do this, is that considered okay? Is that acceptable? Right? I mean,
Mhm.
giving them that platform really help them open up. We're seeing, and we never say that it's compulsory. You all need to do it. We leave it fairly open.
Mhm.
Close to 200 of them, people will just apply to come in. They log on, they know that every Thursday at this time, this is the link never change, they just turn up.
Mhm.
Some days we have 10, some days we have 100. So
Mhm.
it depends on the week, and depends on the topic, and depends on our speaker. And we target more than just the executive level leadership team. We also have individuals who have just finished their management trainee program to join us, former MTs, people in HR, people beyond HR, some folks who have been, like us, first time being a manager, learning how to overcome a pandemic, and they
Mhm.
share with them. It's a really a great experience for them, and to see them blossoming session after session, talking about their own challenges, and how they appreciate the moments.
Mhm. When you're saying that, I can feel that the impact this is having on the organization. I can feel it in the tone of your voice and the way you are explaining how much of an impact it has. And you touched on a couple of things: psychological safety, and then you touched on well-being. And it's heartening to see so many organizations are being on the ball about it during the pandemic and really taking charge on making sure that across the organization there is this sense of psychological safety. So that's amazing. Now, one of the other things you touched just very briefly is investing in talent. And you talked about how L'Oreal has been known to hiring a lot of young talent and investing heavily in grooming them to become managers and successful leaders. How does that look like within L'Oreal?
That's a great question. I think we say that very often,
Mhm.
and we really mean it, right?
Mhm.
I think to really understand what L'Oreal means when it comes to investing on talent, I think we first need to really understand how L'Oreal, you know, built our core beliefs in talent, right?
Mhm.
I think people is our greatest asset. Our
Mm-hmm.
founder, Eugene Schreller,
Mm-hmm.
he has this famous quote that runs in many hallways, in
Mm-hmm.
many offices, and also on our corporate website. A company is not about walls and machines, but about people, people, and people. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's really true, and it holds even right to today. The way we are looking at, talent, the way that we're thinking about talent,
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting, right? It's quite holistic in terms of our approach.
Mm-hmm.
We take a slightly, I mean, I would say that from my own experience, having worked with some different companies,
Mm-hmm.
the way that we think about talent is quite unique. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We not only just look at their own ambition, the work environment, the enablement itself, but also taking into account a lot of the personal consideration as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. On top of that, we also really look at the impact that our talent initiatives holds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I mean, simple stuff, that everybody is really popular topic today. It's on
Mm-hmm.
D&I. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking at these initiatives, how does that really contribute to the organization success, to the individual success,
Mm-hmm.
the contribution, the value add that we bring to our people as well. It's not just about them giving to us, but also us giving to them. And I
Mm.
think that's something that is quite wholesome, when we look at that, at
Mm.
careers at L'Oreal.
Yeah, amazing. People having the focus on the people of the organization rather than the other aspects. And you touched up on diversity and inclusion right now. And as you said, it's one of the favorite topics at this point in time. It's about time that organizations start talking about it, and it's amazing to see that there are some organizations leading it at the forefront. And I do know that you drive the DNI agenda for the talent acquisition in L'Oreal. So, just very curious to see, how do you ensure that DNI is something which is truly practiced within the talent acquisition sphere?
Yeah, we talk about a lot in the team.
Mhm.
I think, like all
Yeah.
DNI initiatives, right? There definitely need to be a sense of deliberateness and intention, that to be discussed. Because without
Mhm.
awareness, it's going to be really hard to address. Yeah.
Mhm.
um, eh, you know while a lot of I think, while it's easy to just look at gender equality, etc., and so on, I think it's also very important that the team recognizes the purpose of why we are investing and making DNI as a commitment. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's not about hiring more of one or less of another. It's really around the fundamental perspective of having a diverse the perspective and views, right?
Mhm.
What value does that bring to us? The uniqueness that every individual would be able to contribute
Mhm.
to the organization, in the workplace, but also to society. Right. I
Mhm.
think one of the things I remember as part of my onboarding at
Mhm.
L'Oreal, and my former manager was mentioning this to me, on the leadership commitments and the value of why DNI is so important for
Mhm.
us. Right?
Mhm.
I mean, fundamentally, we believe that we should have the right reflection of the consumers that we are servicing. Right.
Mhm.
So when we look at DNI, it's really just beyond a specific area. It's really around where we do our, I mean, how we are working closely with our consumers. How
Mhm.
can we build that sense of belonging
Mhm.
in the environments that we operate in, and the value that we can contribute to as well.
Mhm.
So in the talent acquisition teams, we come up with a lot of initiative. It's something that appears on our dashboards, in terms of making it very deliberate, right, on how we measure what we are measuring for. It's part of my a large part of my own KPIs, right?
Mhm.
If I don't meet it, I will be held accountable for it,
Uh-huh.
as well. So I think that's something that we all co-share.
Mhm.
That intention, that
Mhm.
commitment that we have towards DNI.
Okay, that's fantastic. And look, I have a couple of questions from the audience, and people who are listening to this live, feel free to comment your questions to us. But before I take the audience question, I want to continue with the DNI spirit and just ask you that, while inclusion is the thing to do, can you share with us on how it makes business sense as well, and maybe even give some examples on how you've seen that making a lot of business sense within L'Oreal.
Yeah, I think inclusivity. Of course, we say it's a key to success.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have many of our colleagues coming up with really very innovative, initiatives. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that probably one of the key things that I can maybe mention about that we've been, communicating as well, which is, on our talent agenda, high up on talent
Mm-hmm.
agenda, in terms of how can we build an inclusive workforce beyond just the workplace, but into our homes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of the things that we did was to ensure that we have that consistency on parental leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
We look at a minimum, 14 weeks paid leave for mothers, 6 weeks for fathers and or co-parents, we should say it,
Mm-hmm.
making it
Right.
more inclusive. But wherever we operate, right? Whichever that is, I mean, for example, in Singapore, we might say that, 14 weeks is not, kind of industry standard because the government promotes 16 weeks, but
Mm-hmm.
many markets don't have that.
Yeah.
And in Singapore, we have the full 16 weeks, and of course, we have
Mm-hmm.
more of others as well.
Mm-hmm.
As we shared, right, a lot of the initiatives, that we roll out, we really look at how can we ensure that we keep in mind the intention of making sure that we make the company a more inclusive
Mm-hmm.
environment.
Absolutely. Look, that was a great example. And I loved that you immediately pointed out co-parenting. Like it shows that how aware you are of, being inclusive and including all kinds of permutations and combinations there as well. So I'm going to, Agnes, now take a quick audience question about, which is related to talent acquisition. So what do talent acquisition leaders identify as the challenges of hiring in a post pandemic world? What would you think are some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think there are quite a lot of challenges that we are seeing today, right? I think if I were to ask myself currently what keeps me up at night is to ensure that, I mean, at first as a talent acquisition leader, to make sure that my team, is not just out there servicing the business, but also making sure that they're taking care of themselves, right?
Mhm.
That's ultimately the first fundamental importance for us to take care of ourselves first, so that
Mhm.
we can also be able to take care of what we are hired to do.
Mhm.
We're constantly reminding our teams that, it's important. And my team reminds me too,
Uh-huh.
in turn, right? To care for
Uh-huh.
each other, to make sure that we take time out.
Mhm.
We're always busy. I mean, in talent acquisition, for the folks who are listening in, if you're in TA, you know that, it's a never ending job. You're
Mhm.
constantly busy and it's always on, be it on the transaction, be it on the proactive planning, and more so today in talent acquisition, we're being put into doing much more strategic workforce
Mhm.
planning activities, right?
Mhm.
And I would say that's been an area where you would see, the shift and the move into, more predictive, prediction on
Mhm.
acquisition,
Mhm.
is really top in mind. A lot of
Mhm.
companies are moving into it. So are we, in terms of being able to anticipate better,
Mhm.
being able to understand the market, talent market better, so that we are able to work and support our colleagues in HR as well as
Mhm.
our business leaders much better in terms of the skill sets that we're all looking to recruit. Different
Mhm.
industries will have different critical needs.
Yeah.
So do we, in L'Oreal. But when we look at, what keeps us up at night, I would say first making sure that my team has, is managing well
Mhm.
because without them, it's quite impossible for me to do my things as
Mhm.
well, and my ambition, and everything remains as a strategy. And
Mhm.
then, being able to be proactive in terms of anticipating the needs of our business, really truly understanding what the talent landscape is.
Mhm.
Uh, and the talent landscape is changing. I
Yeah.
think it's probably the biggest challenge. A lot of candidates that you approach, they get much more calls. Everyone is talking about the Great Resignation
Yeah.
that we're all
Exactly.
anticipating.
Yeah.
I know many of my industry peers are experiencing it.
Mhm.
We are all sitting there anticipating that it will come. But what does that mean for us, right? Making sure that we are all working towards, that level of anticipation. I think it's been
Mhm.
something that is keeping us up at night a lot.
Absolutely, and that's what we are seeing, like for our executive search as well. How candidates are getting multiple calls, they are getting much more hikes, etc. Because people have had time to sit back at homes in the last 12 to 18 months and think about their careers and what works and what doesn't. But I have to commend something here, Agnes. I've been hearing the word care a lot in this podcast. Whether it's the theme of self care in the TLCs, which truly should be the TLC, as we know, in the tender love and care, and then caring for the team. As a leader, you make sure that your team take care of themselves, and they also hold you accountable for that. So look, sounds like a great team and the organization at large to work with, where it's front and center in the mind of the leaders. So I'm now going to switch gears a bit and move to the perspective of the audience here who want to know a bit more about careers and skills from a leader in talent in the industry. So, according to you, Agnes, what are the most important skills, whether it's soft skills or technical skills, which are required by professionals to reach the senior level leadership roles in today's times?
Yeah, I think every time it's a very good question, to be honest. I think every organization or that I have been interacting with, whether when I was in search or when I have gone into the corporate organization, I think one of the critical competencies that I would
Mhm.
observe is stakeholder management, communication
Mhm.
skills. Yeah.
Mhm.
But if you really peel that layer off and
Mhm.
look at the fundamental skills that one should really hone,
Mhm.
right? Beyond just being able to speak in an effective manner,
Mhm.
is really having an open mindset. The
Yeah.
curiosity, having that open mindset, the self awareness or the ability to reflect. I think reflection
Mhm.
is so critical and so
Mhm.
important
Mhm.
for you to see if, how you can improve. How could you do something or an experience or situation better?
Mhm.
How can you innovate?
Mhm.
That because I think we're living in unprecedented times, right?
Yeah.
Entire world. I mean, when have we had the entire world having a pandemic at the same time? you
Yeah.
know, One of my colleagues said, we're all in the same ocean but different type of boats.
Yeah.
Some is on
Absolutely.
a rowing
Yeah.
one, some is on a speedboat, but every different boat, right?
Mhm.
But how I think the way that we need to grapple with this, change is and be able to come up stronger is not
Mhm.
going to be, something that we'll learn in school. It's not a
Mhm.
textbook, you know, um, strategy or a textbook question. You definitely need to have, good agility,
Mhm.
able to innovate, to be able to strategize, and have that courage, I
Mm-hmm.
think in leadership roles, no matter what functions you're holding or business roles that you're taking,
Mm-hmm.
that courage, that managerial courage to speak up is going to be extremely important
Mm-hmm.
because you will be in uncomfortable positions from time
Yeah.
to time, whether is it managing the team or
Mm-hmm.
whether is it in a business conversation or a business strategic decisions that you need to take. I think these are very important skills that one should develop as you are having the ambition to become a more senior leader.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And look, you've shown curiosity and an open mind in your career throughout. And that's why we see such beautiful, significant career pivots and you rising into these leadership positions. So, you've had a remarkable career so far, and I'm sure that you will be gaining even greater heights in the years to come. So, what advice would you give to people entering workforce to be able to have an exciting career? And I'm sure that with L'Oreal having such a strong youth program, you would have a lot of information and wisdom there to guide our younger listeners.
I I don't know if it's wisdom, but I think it's a common conversations that we have, in my team and I always whenever we
Mm,
meet young talent. It's again back to the sense of curiosity, right? I think when we are
mhm,
young, whenever we go for a conversation, we're
mhm.
so focused on just that one thing,
Yeah.
and we stop listening. We stop
Mhm.
listening to the interviewer, for
Yeah.
example, when we're going through the interview. We stop listening to the advice that people are trying to tell you,
Mhm.
really desperately. I think listening is a very important, advice that I would give because
Mhm.
when you listen, you would then be able to discover. Of
Mhm.
course, when you're young, you're always curious, right?
Yeah.
Because you will feel like, hey, I don't know enough. I always tell our teams, especially our management trainees, whenever I interact with them, don't ever forget this curiosity, because that
Mhm.
curiosity will continuously bring you, very far in your career. Because there is a lot of first time, and there's a lot of
Mhm.
first moments.
Mhm.
Your first job, the first time you become a manager or a team
Mhm.
project leader, the first time
Mhm.
you are going to do a role that is unique, the first promotion, the
Mhm.
first leadership position. There's many first.
Yeah.
But as we are, what I've seen in a lot of interviews when I was in executive search, of individuals who really struggle to
Mhm.
land, their next ideal, opportunity that they
Mhm.
have the ambition for, and they ask
Mhm.
themselves, I've done all this, why can't I
Mhm.
get that, right?
Mhm.
And I would say, if I take a step back and I just look, why are they not getting that offer, or
Mhm.
that final interview? I would say, it's that they have stopped listening, they've stopped being
Mhm.
open, they've stopped being curious, right? They're
Mhm.
only curious about what can I do to get that job. They're not
Mm.
curious about what can they do when they get that job.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be so important. Don't be too focused on what you're not getting.
Mhm.
I would say, because you will miss the entire experience altogether. I mean, life is a
Mm.
journey.
Mhm.
um, it's helpful to get a goal, it's important to have an ambition, but you need to really embrace and enjoy the moment.
Mhm.
Then you would have that opportunity to really discover what you're not going to be missing. I
Mhm.
think that's probably the uniqueness of how I have worked on my own career as well.
Yeah. And it shows. And look, you said that in the beginning when we were talking about, and I asked you this question about your career, being in the flow, being open-minded, and not being too fixated on what you thought you wanted to do. And I think that's what you've just mentioned about the career advice for the youth as well. And it's a remarkable career advice. You see, I'm a bit stumped because I can feel that advice myself. So, Agnes, this has been a wonderful conversation. I have learned a lot from you and had a lot of fun along the way as well. Thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all that you did. For our viewers, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please follow Agnes. Her LinkedIn profile is linked in this post as well as in the comments if you're listening on the podcast. Feel free to follow me as well if you want to know about our upcoming podcasts. So, thank you so much for your time, Agnes. Do you have any last words to say to the listeners and to myself?
No, thank you so much for having me today, Shop. I really enjoy. You know, I started off being a little bit nervous, but I think it's been fun. Thank you for allowing me to speak about us as well. And to everyone, enjoy the moment and stay safe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Agnes.